Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai. Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadara Shiva Sati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakan Radhakan Gitar Govardhan ki jai. Mai Pardam ki jai. Vrindavandam ki jai. Jamuna Devi ki jai. Ganga Devi ki jai. Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Pramanande. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare
All
Krishna.
glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Hare Bol.
Hare
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminati Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayana Namaskarita Naram Chaiva Namatra Devam Sarasvatim Vyasyam Jatutayam Madhiryat Nasta Prayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Autamashloki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to Saturday morning Bhagavatam class. For those of you in the temple, welcome. It's nice to see all of your beautiful faces and all of you online too. So unfortunately, we don't have anyone to share the screen here in the temple. So I'm going to read the verse. So we have two verses for today. I'm going to read the verse and the translation, and we'll go on to the verse 14, and we'll do the repetition on that one. Purapita no Bhagavan Daksho Duhitra Vatsala Kamvranita Varam Vatsa
Kamrinita Varam Vatsa.
Iti Apricha Nakpritak.
Itya Prachana Pratak.
I'll read synonyms. Pura, in days long ago. Pita, father. Na, our. Bhagavan, the most opulent. Daksha, Duhitra Vatsala, affectionate to his daughters. Come, unto whom? Vrinita, you want to accept. Varam, your husband. Vatsa, oh my children. Iti, thus. Aprichata, inquired. Na, us. Pritak, separately. For those of you who are, if you wanted to log in locally, we're in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, chapter, hold on, it's not. We're in Canto 3, chapter 14, verse 13 and 14. Okay. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In days long ago, our father, the most opulent Daksha, who was affectionate to his daughters, asked each of us separately whom we would prefer to select as our husband. Purport. It appears from this verse that free selection of a husband was allowed by the father, but not by free association. The daughters were asked separately to submit their selection of a husband who was famous for his acts and personality. The ultimate selection depended on the choice of the father. Okay, verse 14. So we'll do repeat on this one. Sad vidit vatmajanom no.
Viditi Vatmajanam.
Bhavam satana bhavana.
Bhavan Sanatana Santana Bhavana.
Triyodas sadadatasham.
Trayodasadatat Dasam.
Yate shilam anuvrata.
Yaste shiram anuvrata.
Davitit vat majanamno.
Sa vidita vidivatmajanam no.
Bhavam santana bhavana.
Bhavam sanatana bhavana.
Trayodasha dadatasham.
Trayodasada dasada dasam
Tasham. Yate shilam anuvrata.
yaste silam anuvrata.
Savidit vat majanamno.
Sa viditvatmajanam no.
Bhavam santana bhavana.
Bhavam sanatana bhavana.
Trayodasha dadatasham.
Trayodasada dasam
Yaste shilam anuvrata.
yaste silam anuvrata.
Okay. Does anyone in the temple want to do chant? Savitit vatmajanamno. Bhavam shantana bhavana. Trayodasha dadatasham. Yaste shilam anuvrata. Savidit vachamajanamno. Bhavam santana bhavana. Trayodasha dadatasham. Yaste shilam anuvrata. Anyone else? Okay. Online, anyone like to chant?
Sa viditvatmajanam no.
Savidit vatmajanamno.
Bhavan sanatana bhavana.
Bhavam santana bhavana.
Trayodasada dasam
Trayodasha dadatasham.
yaste silam anuvrata.
Yaste shilam anuvrata. Anyone else online?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Shuman. Morning.
Good morning. Savidit Vatmajanam no
Savidit vatmajanamno.
Bhavam Santana Bhavanaha
Bhavam santana bhavana.
Trayodasha Dadat Tasam
Trayodasha dadatasham.
Yasate Shilam Anuvrata.
Yaste shilam anuvrata. Anyone else online?
Saviditvatmajanamno
Savidit vamajanamno.
bhavam santana bhavana
Bhavam santana bhavana.
त्रयोदशाददात् तासाम्
Trayodasha dadatasham.
यास्ते शीलम् अनुव्रता.
Yashte shilam anuvrata. Thank you, Prananath Prabhu. Anyone else? Okay, let's go for word to word. Synonyms. Sa. Daksha. Vidikva. Understanding. Atma Janam. Of the daughters. Na. Our. Bhavam. Indication. Santana. Children. Bhavana. Well-wisher. Trayudasha. 13. Adadat. Handed over. Tasham. Of all of them. Ya. Those who are. Te. Your. Shilam. Behavior. Anuvrata. All faithful. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Our well-wisher Father Daksha, after knowing our intentions, handed over 13 of his daughters unto you. Since then, we have all been faithful. Purport. Generally, the daughters were too shy to express their opinions before their father, but the father would accept the daughter's intention through someone else, such as a grandmother, to whom the grandchildren had free access. King Daksha collected the opinions of his daughters and thus handed over 13 to Kashyapa. Every one of Diti's sisters was a mother of children. Therefore, since she was equally faithful to the same husband, why should she remain without children? Om Jnana-timaranjasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitamina Tashme Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadabhayam Dadati Svadbatantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Kadara Shivasati Gaur Bhaktavinda Nama Om Vishivadaya Krishna Pasaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Chana Swamaniti Namane Snakta Chaita Srupaneda Vagmanam Drasa Pluton Prabhupada Prananam Bhakti Charaswaman. So today I actually gave class yesterday, and so I'm back to back today with class. And so what I mentioned in class yesterday that I've decided to do, because it's a kind of a theme, the ongoing discussion. So I decided to kind of take the class yesterday and today and split it in two, just to kind of keep. But I'll do a little review for those of you who were not able to attend class yesterday. So right now we're talking about DT and her husband, and DT is overcome. She's one of the 13 daughters that was given over to him, and so it's very important that we understand kind of where she's coming from. So DT is overcome with sex desire. And this is something this topic that came up yesterday. We were discussing how lust can really impact our lives. But DT her husband is in deep meditation. And this is the context. So we set the scene yesterday. We're setting the scene that that her husband Kashyapa is deep in meditation. He was offering oblations to Lord Vishnu. It was the time of day. So we are looking at her husband's offering oblations. He's deep in meditation. It's coming towards sunset. This is all of these things are presenting a scenario where DT is now appealing to her husband in a way that is inauspicious. But we hear all of these arguments by her. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. So yesterday we were talking about how lust and desire can really impact our minds and impact our hearts, the impact of Cupid on our lives. So today, as I mentioned, I kind of wanted to split the theme for the larger section. We've read from 7 through 14 over the last few days. So we've covered a lot of territory, but a lot of the territory that we've been covering is really looking at a couple of main themes. The themes that like I said, we discussed yesterday were lust. Today, I want to get into the concept of appropriate time of conception and also looking at DT's arguments a little bit and doing a little bit of a deeper dive into these arguments that she's making. Now, in today's verses specifically, and I don't want to just gloss over today's verses regarding the giving of the daughters to Kashyapa, because obviously we know often in Vedic times, the father was the one who would select the husband for the daughter. The father, or maybe an elder son or an uncle, there would be someone that would be making that selection of the daughter to find the right husband. So in this instance, the daughters, they brought this to their father, said, this is who we want to be married to. And the father, of course, gave their blessings and allowed for this marriage. So a little bit slightly unconventional, but still it was not without the proper, the proper vetting, let's say, that went into making sure that this was the proper person for his daughters. I mean, Kashyapa is an elevated devotee. He's offering his oblations. He's doing all the things Vedically in a Vedically proper way. And this is something that the father would want to have for his daughters. He would want to make sure that there is a husband, a father that is Vedically conscious, that is a devotee, would want to have a good devotee partner for his daughter that can provide that that foundation for devotional activities. And so Kashyapa, being the dedicated husband, is in quite a quandary. Here he is in the middle of offering his oblations to Vishnu. He's in the middle of deep meditation, deep prayer, and his beautiful wife approaches him. So, and her arguments are very compelling. She wants sons, but she's completely overcome by these desires. So it's, we can get into the biological components, and I touched on it a little bit yesterday, right? From a biological standpoint, we can look at her deep desire, her lustiness, her desire for children. This could have been a hormonal trigger, right? We could say, I'm in the healthcare field, so I can say, well, there's, biochemically speaking, right? It was probably her time of ovulation and she was ready. So she knew she wanted to have a child. So she was feeling these desires to have sex with her husband, to beget a son or sons. So we can look at that all biologically and say, okay, that makes sense. However, we want to also take a few steps back at the wider lens to see what's happening here, where she's youthful, she's young, she's desirous, she has these sisters that already have children by her husband. So we're exploring some envy here as well. She's feeling like she doesn't have what they have, and she wants that too. She wants to also be she wants that esteemed position of having children by the father, or by her husband, who has already had children with her sisters. So this is going to also elevate her position as well, because we know that Vedically, and also in a lot of different monarchy type, like ancient monarchy systems, that when a kshatriya or a has multiple wives, that it's the ones with the children, especially the ones with the wives with the sons, that are elevated in society, right? So she's now seen her position to be compromised. She is, of all the 13 sisters, she's the one that doesn't have children. She doesn't have, especially a son. So now she's very much feeling that her position is compromised. So all of these things are kind of snowballing to set the scene for what we're reading right now. Okay, so it gives us a pretty good picture of where we're at, where DT's mind is at, where her heart is at, where she is biologically speaking. Like I said, she's a woman that's probably in that space of her cycle where she might be in that ready for childbearing, ready for conception. So we can't ignore these biological factors too. And so the first thing I want to talk about is the Garbhadan Samskara. Okay, those of you might be familiar with the Garbhadan Samskara, which is, what is the appropriate time for begetting a child? What is the appropriate time for conception? And this is something that in Vedic terms there is a proper time for so many things. There's different samskaras for different things, right? We have the first grain ceremony. We have this. We have the samskara for, you've seen where the children may walk toward the book or toward the money, or So there's different rituals. The samskaras are rituals. And the Garbhadan samskara is one that Prabhupada speaks about. He doesn't speak about a lot of the different rituals. He speaks about them, in a broader sense of the Vedic traditions. But in terms of how to bring about children into the world, he talks about this one in various different points throughout the Bhagavatam, more specifically. And the Garbhadan Samskara is a ritual that is meant for getting more godly children. Okay, so we can see in today's world that it's like looking around us, we don't see any, usually, children are just had, right? Maybe it's very planned out. Some people are planners and they go about planning, okay, well, we have to make sure we'd have this and the timing and this and this and this. But the actual process of conception is maybe not so thought out. Maybe it's like, okay, well, now's my time. Let's do this, especially for couples that are having fertility issues, they may be very biological, maybe biochemical about it. Like, okay, this is the time we have to do it in this way. So there may be a very medical process for people that might have difficulties conceiving. For people that are maybe a little more lusty in their relationship, they're like, oops, we're pregnant. You know, how often do we hear about that happening? A lot. And this is where we also have especially a lot of unwanted children too. And so even in Bhagavad Gita, right, we can reflect back to the first chapter in Bhagavad Gita where Arjuna is making the argument that why not to kill his family, because he's worried about all of he's concerned about irreligion and what would happen if he killed his relation. The religion with religion begets irreligion begets unwanted progeny. And so unwanted progeny happens when there isn't this thoughtfulness, when aren't these rituals, there isn't the Vedic concept of conception in the mix. And this is what one of Arjuna's really big concerns was, that he was afraid that if he carried out his duties in the way of killing his family, that it would bring about this onslaught of repercussions, namely, and then ending in unwanted progeny. Unwanted progeny then turns into degradation of society. So here we are in a very precarious situation for Kashyapa. His wife is very much desirous to have a child. She's not thinking about the conditions. She's not thinking about what it might bring into their lives. And we know, like, fast forward, you know, it doesn't bring the best things, right? This is the ultimately, spoiler alert, ultimately, when they do conceive, they conceive two demons, Hiranyaka and Hiranyakashipu. So now we can see what can happen, and we can look around us in this world. It's not to say that, you know, we don't want to like point fingers like, oh, they're all demons because they were born out of wedlock or whatever it was. However, it does create a compromised situation for people that, you know, of course, when there's a situation where the child was born and it was born into a family and there's a lot of strife and the child wasn't planned, and it can create a lot of difficulties. So here we have, so the Garbhadan Samskara. What is the process of Garbhadan Samskara? So there are processes that go into place. There's the purification of the body and the mind. So we have to be very clean. The body has to be clean. That goes without saying, like, keep the body very clean. This is very important, but also the mind. And how do we cleanse the mind? We do that through purificatory processes of chanting, of prayer, of yajna. So these are the things to clear the mind, right? So we want to prepare ourselves with mantras, with yajna. These are the types of things that can go into the purification of the body and the mind. There's lifestyle, diet. So everything going up to, leading into the months before. In Western society, so like I said, I work in the health field, I see people preparing for childbirth and are preparing for conception, and they're eating very good nutrition. You know, in the Western society, they're like, okay, I'm not drinking for a month. I'm not, you know, I'm eating very clean. I'm eating my fruits and vegetables. I'm not going out and getting pizza. So in a Vedic sense, what are we doing? We're observing a pure, a cleaner diet. Okay. We want to make sure that the food is offered. Make sure that the food is nourishing. We want to make sure the food's sattvic. Okay. Because if we're eating food that's too tamasic, that rajasic, we are lowering the consciousness of our body, right? Especially for in that time of conception. We also, and just biochemically speaking, those foods that are more sattvic are also going to improve cellular health. They're going to improve the chances of conception. So the mental state then is also getting purified through, as I mentioned, through these prayers. Now there's the component of time and place. So here in Kashyapa was in meditation. So his mind may have been in the right place, but he was interrupted. She interrupted him during his meditation. He wasn't complete with his meditation, and his mind wasn't even preparing for conception. He was just offering his daily meditations or, at that time of day. So the auspiciousness of timing is that not just the fact that she was approaching him at sundown, which was not auspicious, but she was also approaching him in the middle of his meditation, in the middle of his sadhana. So that was extremely inauspicious. So we want to try and sanctify our space for conception, keep it purified, and make sure that it's, this is for begetting, like I said, godly children, making sure that the space is purified, but make sure the timing is also appropriate. And there's a lot of, you could go to an astrologer, right, and have an astrologer completely map out the most auspicious time for conception, match it up with the woman's cycle, and then you can map all these things out. So there's a lot of steps one could go through. Then we want to bring in the Lord. So we might do yajna, we might do some sort of prayers or invocation to bring Lord Vishnu, bring Krishna into that process. Because if we want to beget a godly child, we have to be in that mindset. We want to bring the Lord into the process. The union, the actual process of conception, the sexual union has to be purified. It has to be in that thought process of begetting a child has to be there as well. And there's also prayers that can be done. So there's a lot, right? And then after conception, there's also things to be done too for maintaining the womb, maintaining the consciousness of the mother, especially keeping her protected, keeping her healthy, saying prayers for her, offering yajnas, all of these things. So there's a lot that can, from a Vedic perspective, there's a lot that can go into begetting a godly child. And like I said, DT definitely kind of threw a lot of that out, most of that out the window. She was just very lusty. And she's declared she had been struck by Cupid's bow. So she's blaming Cupid, but it was really her own desires that had gotten the best of her, and her own envy as well. So what happens here? So now we know that we have this couple, we have this situation. Now let's talk about her powers of persuasion, because she really lays it all out. She really tries to put the spin on for her husband to really make a compelling argument. And the power of persuasion, and we'll talk about power of persuasion in our own minds that can get us to justify just about anything if we really want. So she's really trying to justify, through her power of persuasion, she is justifying that she is in the right by disturbing his meditation and asking him for this. Because she knows the right things. She knows the buttons to push, right? Every wife knows how to push her husband's buttons, right? Every husband also knows how to push his wife's buttons. So that's the thing about that relationship, is we all know how to push each other's buttons to get what we want. And she's pulling out all the stops. She's not taking any, she's not sitting back at all with that. So couple of points. So she made an argument that she was approached by Cupid. So that was one thing. The other argument that she made was that she wanted sons. Now that's a very compelling argument, especially in Vedic terms, begetting a son. Like I said earlier, all of her other sisters had children, but it would elevate her and it would elevate him. So she's trying to appeal to his ego. She's saying, but if you give me what I want right now and we have sons, then it'll elevate your status as well, because now you have these sons. She also spoke very loudly to him. She was speaking in a very commanding way, very loudly, to break him out of his meditation. She didn't even use any bodily influences. She used her voice. And her voice was like demanding, this is what I want. Jai, 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 Jai. So she was talking very loudly to get his attention and to break him out of meditation. The other thing, she's appealing to him on compassion. She's like, but I'm so desirous. I want you so badly. So she's trying to, and he knows he doesn't want to take the chance of her straying. So he's stuck. But he's also seeing that she's suffering. So she's trying to really express to him, I am suffering. I'm suffering here. And you can help relieve this suffering. You have all the power to relieve the suffering. You can, give me what I want. I am suffering from desire for you. I'm suffering from not having a son. I'm suffering. My sisters have everything that I don't have. I'm suffering. Please be compassionate on me. Please. And she's begging him, please. So she's making some really deep arguments here. How could he refuse her? So this is this victimization too, like this urgency that comes about, right? She says, my mind is disturbed. My body is desirous. My mind is disturbed. Then she plays the guilt card, right? Like I said, she's pulling out all the stops. She's like, makes him feel guilty. This is your duty as a husband. Your duty as a husband is to take care of me in all ways. So now she's pulling out that card. She's like, this is your responsibility to me. And she's like, you don't want me to give myself to someone else. So this is like fear factor, manipulation. Wow. She's really pushing it here. And then lastly, like I said, she's threatening him. And she's really just making it clear that I want this right now. I want my sons, and it'll benefit you too. So finally he relents. He gives in. He gives in to her. But we know what the outcome is. Like I said, spoiler alert, we do know that they ended up having 2 demon sons. But it's her, what I really want to dive into today is how we can really think about, we can use the power of persuasion with others. We all have the power. We all have the ability to persuade. We all have sometimes things that we might really want. But think about how we might even take that to justify. It's even the smallest thing. We can take that concept of persuasion and we can use it to justify our own actions, oftentimes in the world. And this is something that it's really important to think about how we might feel a sense of urgency. So we can have like what I call litmus test, right? To test ourselves with the litmus test. What am I feeling right now? And I try to do this even for myself. I have a little book and it's like, hold on, pump the brakes, like, make a list first, write it down before you dive in head first. Write it down, sit on it for a day, sit on it for 2 days. Because in the moment, we might feel very desirous of something might strike us. And we start like, I have to do this, but there could be negative consequences to some of that. Sometimes it might be small. Sometimes it could be, the consequences might be just small. There might be other times when the consequences put us into a situation where it's impacting other people in our lives. So this is what I call taking a beat. It's that taking a beat, because here she did not take a beat. She just dove in, and it reminds me of that very youthful energy, right? You see people in their 20s, and I remember being like this too, that very youthful energy of just, they're so passionate, just want everything now, that instant gratification. And this is what the material world is like. It's training. It's trying to train us. The material world really does train the body, train the mind to want things now. DT wanted her husband at the exact moment. She didn't say, let's take a beat. He's meditating. I don't usually interrupt him during meditation. I'm gonna just go off and visit my sisters, play with my nieces and nephews, and I'll come back later and I'll sit down and have a discussion with him. No, she was like, suddenly the urge hit her and she just acted on it. There's like this urgency. Do we see this around us in the world? All the time. And even more so, we can see as we're looking, people are just scrolling on Instagram. They decide that they want to get something. I'll just boop, hit the buy button. And next thing you know, you have 5 boxes arriving the next day. And Amazon even does same day delivery now, which is crazy. I mean, there's times I've had to buy I don't know, like my protein powder or whatever on Amazon, and it shows up the same day it's on my porch, like a few hours later. I'm like, okay, you know. But we get in these modes, as a society. We have become very programmed for instant gratification. We've become very averse to the take a beat concept. We've become very averse as a society to contemplation and thinking things through to understand what consequences might occur tomorrow, the next day, next year, because that is the material world. Because the more that we just make these knee-jerk reactions to things, the more we have this impulsivity that just propels us into activity, propels us into whatever it is. This is entrapment. This is just creating more, spinning the web more and more around us. It's entangling us more and more because we know that it creates this insatiable desire. And this is, again, going back to DT, because she couldn't stop thinking about it. The desire got stronger and stronger and stronger. And this is what happens in the material world too. It's like we do one thing, we're like, well, that didn't quite satisfy me. So now I want this. Well, that didn't quite satisfy me either. So now we're just in this addictive mode of just chasing, right? And so, and like I said, we can see this all around us in the modern world and in material energies. And it's very interesting. And I keep coming back to this image I saw at my house the other day. It was a very cool illustration of nature and material nature. So I live out in the suburbs out in Chester County, and like an old house kind of in the woods. And there was this big spider web. And I was out doing my job, but we have a patio, and I was sitting outside chanting my rounds, and I looked over and I'm like, huh. And there's this huge spider web. And I don't usually see things caught in spider webs, but this time I did. And it was a bug that was just wrapped up, completely wrapped up in the web. He had been just spun into it. The even crazier thing is that about 10 minutes later, I saw this huge spider come out, pull it out of the web and take it in. And I was like, whoa, that was crazy. But it just, in that moment, I was like, this is like the material world. It's like you get caught in the web and you're just like, and trying to get out, but you can't. You get caught up and you're spun up. And then like the spider comes out and just, and it pulls the life out of you. I know it's a very gruesome kind of, but it reminded me of that because it really can suck the life out of us. We can get ourselves so entangled with desire. We can get ourselves so entangled in this instant gratification and justifying these arguments that we can tell ourselves. And I'm so guilty of it too. So I'm constantly trying to watch myself to see how am I trying to justify something, thinking that it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It's just this one little thing. It's just that. It's not a big deal. But it's the compounding effect of that. And suddenly we're caught in a spider web. We're like, oh no, how did this happen? We can't get out. So today's lesson I wanted to really drive home was just kind of thinking about the samskara and of conception and the Garbhadan samskara, and thinking about those steps, but also then looking at DT and how she was completely opposite of that. She completely ignored any conception around that, literally and figuratively. She ignored that, and Her desire overtook her. Her arguments, she was so compelling. So I'm going to take a break here. It's almost 8:45. I'm going to open it up for any thoughts, any questions, any reflections. Corrections are always welcome. So anything online or in person. That's quite all right. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you for the nice class. I have a question. Is there any relationship between lust and enviousness?
Yeah. So the question here in person was, is there a relationship between lust and envy? So I think when there's lust, lust begets anger. But where does envy fit in? Envy is a desire. It's a desire for something we don't have. So when we think about envy, what we're thinking about is that person has something I don't have, and I'm envious of it. And that is a lustiness there, because there's a desire that's unfulfilled. And envy so often turns to anger. And we know from Bhagavad Gita that lust begets anger, and that it can take us completely down into the path of ignorance and irreligion. So yeah, absolutely. The tie between envy and lust is very deep, because when one is very much desiring something that someone else has and not appreciating that someone has that, but they're desiring it themselves, which was Diti. She wanted what her sisters had. So that created a scene of envy for her, which was also in that space of lust as well. It was that desire. So I don't know if that.
It means yeah, it means that seed is embedded. When we are very envious of something, then lust aggravates. It creates havoc.
Yeah. When we have a lot of envy, we have this lust can be triggered, because that envy is so strong. Like I said, envy is that desire. So then from that envy, we have this lust for something that we can't have, or that someone else has. And lust is often just given a sexual connotation, but it's not. We can have lust for material desires, money, wealth, fame, power. There's no end. It's something that is so desirous that's outside of us. And the envy is the desire of that person has it and I don't. Which is a lot of lust. If you look around, you can say that person has power, I don't have power, I want what they have. I'm very envious of them. And they're kind of married together, in my opinion. I think that the two are kind of go hand in hand, as I see it. Yeah. So great. Anything else? Anyone online? Okay. Great. Well, thank you all for coming. I just wanted to also remind all of you, make an announcement about our Bhakti circles that we're starting in a week and a half. Myself and Malati Devi Dasi will be leading 2 Bhakti circles, which are going to be meeting for 8 weeks on Zoom. The circles are an opportunity for an hour and a half every week for a small group of us to get together with a specific topic every week to speak about Bhakti Yoga, our own practices, our challenges. And so it's going to be a really lovely gathering. So all are invited. We will get some information out to all of you soon. Thank you so much, everyone, for a wonderful sadhana today, a wonderful sangha, and I hope to see you all soon. Hare Krishna, Vanchakalpa, Tarubhishcha, Kripa Sindhu, Bhaiviccha, Patitanam, Pavanebhyo.